Hey everyone, this is Stevie Richards, host of the Stevie Richards Show, and you are watching Pinfalls and Pixels, where wrestling meets gaming, hosted by Glocky.
It wasn't taken in a match. It wasn't lost in a controversial finish. It wasn't even stolen. The WCW World Television Championship was thrown into the trash. No angle, no build-up, no respect. One of the most decorated championships in the history of Mid-Atlantic Wrestling, Jim Crockett Promotions, and WCW was tossed out like yesterday's gimmick. But what fans witnessed that night wasn't just the end of a championship. It was the final nail in the coffin for a title that once represented everything great about televised pro wrestling. Before it was disrespected, the WCW Television Championship was a proving ground. The belt that helped build legends like Ric Flair, Arn Anderson, Tully Blanchard, Steve Austin, and Booker T. It was the mid-card prize. Defended weekly under strict time limits, adding drama and intensity to every Saturday 6:05 p.m. broadcast on TBS. So, how did this championship, once synonymous with hard-fought glory, become an afterthought dumped in a dumpster? This is the rise and fall of the WCW World Television Championship. Before it was WCW, before it was nationally televised on TNT, and before any NWO takeover, Television Championship was born in the heart of Jim Crockett Promotions under the banner of Mid-Atlantic Championship Wrestling. In 1974, the title was introduced as the Mid-Atlantic Television Championship, a secondary belt designed not to headline pay-per-views, but to build the stars who would one day headline the industry. Wrestling fans knew what it meant when they heard the bell ring at 6:05 p.m. on TBS. It was time for gritty, Southern-style wrestling, and almost every week, that time slot included a TV title match. With tight 10 to 15 minute time limits, the television championship created tension and urgency. A draw meant the champion retained, a rule that forced challengers to be aggressive and champions to be clever. From the start, this wasn't just a mid-card belt, it was the proving ground. You didn't hold this title unless promoters believed you had the ability to carry a match, sell a story, and keep a televised audience glued to their screens. Paul Jones, the first recognized champion, was followed by names that defined the Mid-Atlantic era. Ric Flair, long before the robes and limos, carried the TV title in 1977, showcasing the skills that would one day make him the man. Ricky Steamboat, young and white-hot with the crowd, became one of the most beloved champions in the belt's early history. Flair vs. Steamboat for the TV title was a regular attraction on Mid-Atlantic broadcasts, planting the seeds of a legendary rivalry that would carry over into the world title picture years later. The masked superstar, Greg Valentine, and Baron von Raschke all held the championship, each reign carrying its own flavor of villainy, technique, or brute force. The belt was never meant to overshadow the World Heavyweight title, but in the 70s and 80s, it often delivered better in-ring action and more compelling weekly drama. By the mid-80s, the title was firmly established as a cornerstone of Jim Crockett Promotions. Its importance grew alongside the promotion itself, and by 1985, it was renamed the NWA World Television Championship, reflecting its growing prestige as JCP moved onto a national stage through WTBS and syndication. The era of Four Horsemen dominance was just around the corner, but even then, the TV title didn't shrink in the spotlight, it shined even brighter. With Jim Crockett Promotions reaching national television audiences and joining forces with the National Wrestling Alliance, the television championship was upgraded in name and prestige. This was the era where the TV title truly earned its reputation as a launchpad for greatness. If you could carry this belt and keep fans invested week after week, you were being tested for something much bigger. And no one passed that test with flying colors quite like Tully Blanchard. Tully's reign from 1984 into 1985 wasn't just dominant, it was cinematic. Paired with Baby Doll, the Perfect 10 Blanchard brought arrogance and psychology to a title defense like nobody else. Following Tully, the torch was passed to a man whose name would go hand in hand with the championship, Arn Anderson. If Ric Flair was the man, then Arn Anderson was the enforcer. And as far as many fans are concerned, he was also Mr. Television Title. Arn's reigns, specifically in 1986 and 1987, were textbook examples of what the belt was supposed to represent. Technical excellence, storytelling, and TV time limit drama. Whether he was facing enhancement talent, mid-card workhorses, or rising stars, Arn delivered matches that made the belt feel important. The Four Horsemen used the TV title like a strategic weapon. It was often their way of holding gold without interfering with Flair's world title reign. The belt's weekly presence on shows like World Championship Wrestling and Power Hour made it a critical part of NWA's presentation, and fans tuned in specifically for those 10-minute time limit matches. In 1988, Nikita Koloff took the belt into a new direction, defending it under Soviet rules and bringing brute strength and a dangerous aura to its image. Even while stars like Sting and Lex Luger were being elevated to the US and world title scene, the TV title remained a featured part of weekly programming. As the 80s closed, the NWA's identity began to shift, but the television championship held firm. Even as champions rotated from Mike Rotunda to Rick Steiner to the Great Muta, the belt remained a reliable showcase of both talent and storyline. Muta's 1989 reign in particular brought international flair to the title. He held the belt with mystique, defending it across both American and Japanese broadcasts. But change was coming. In 1991, Jim Crockett Promotions had officially been sold and rebranded as World Championship Wrestling. The letters NWA would fade, and the television title would take on a new identity. With it came a new vision, more glitz, more color, and eventually, more chaos. But in the early 90s, the WCW World Television Championship still had purpose. The belt became a cornerstone of WCW Saturday Night, a platform for younger, hungry wrestlers to prove themselves before being elevated to the US or world title scene. It was no longer just a Crockett legacy piece. It was a developmental spotlight in real time. And no one used it better than a young, cocky blonde Texan by the name of Stunning Steve Austin. Austin captured the TV title in 1992 under the management of Paul E. Dangerously as part of the Dangerous Alliance. This reign wasn't about beer or middle fingers, it was about mat wrestling, technical dominance, and cold calculated strategy. Austin's multiple reigns with the title showed that WCW had future main event talent on its hands, even if they never fully capitalized on it. Alongside Austin, names like Ricky Steamboat returned to give the title legitimacy, engaging in classic bouts with Paul Orndorff, Arn Anderson, and Lord Steven Regal. And speaking of Regal, his reigns from 1993 to 1994 are some of the most underrated in WCW history. Lord Steven Regal made the TV title feel sophisticated, if not outright smug. His matches against Steamboat, Johnny B. Bad, and Larry Zbyszko were technical clinics that brought back shades of the Crockett era, with a fresh heel twist. Then came Johnny B. Bad, WCW's flamboyant wildcard. Don't let the gimmick fool you. Behind the glitter was Mark Marrow, an athletic, dynamic performer who carried the TV title with pride and delivered surprisingly hard-hitting matches. His feuds with Regal and DDP helped the belt stay active and visible, especially on Saturday nights and syndicated TV blocks. But the biggest success story of the TV title in the mid-90s? Booker T. Booker's first reign began in 1997, but his road to that gold started long before. Through impressive performances as part of the Harlem Heat and in solo matches on syndicated WCW programming. When he finally won the television championship from Disco Inferno, it wasn't just a big win, it was a signal. WCW had a breakout singles star. Booker's matches with Chris Benoit, especially their Best of 7 series in 1998, were must-see wrestling. Their chemistry and work rate elevated the belt back to something approaching its former glory, even as WCW's main event scene started falling into chaos. For a time, it looked like the belt could evolve with the times. It was changing hands, yes, but it was doing so between hungry talents like Fit Finlay, Rick Martel, Chris Jericho, and even Ultimo Dragon. The title was still defended regularly, and it was still delivering strong matches on Nitro, Thunder, and Saturday Night. But behind the scenes, priorities were shifting. The NWO was dominating the spotlight, the cruiserweight division was exploding, and WCW's mid-card was being compressed, overlooked, and rewritten by people more interested in shock than substance. The television title wasn't dying yet, but the countdown had begun. As WCW entered its most profitable and most chaotic years, the television championship found itself caught in the middle. The belt was still active, still defended, and still technically important, but it was no longer a priority. It was becoming filler. In early 1997, the title changed hands multiple times, moving between people like Lord Steven Regal and Ultimo Dragon. While the superstars were solid in-ring performers, their reigns lacked the storylines or promo time that previous champions enjoyed. On a good week, the title would make Nitro. On a bad one, it was buried on Worldwide or Saturday Night, with little mention on WCW's flagship shows. But by this point, the writing was on the wall. Nitro's second hour was dominated by NWO segments. The World Heavyweight Championship, the US title, and Cruiserweight titles got the marketing push. The TV title, once WCW's most consistent and reliable championship, was now used to pad time, or worse, ignored altogether. Chris Jericho briefly held the title in 1998 and injected it with a signature mix of sarcasm and showmanship. Jericho mocked WCW brass, renamed moves, and held phony press conferences during his reign. A heel gimmick that added entertainment value, even if the belt itself was becoming a punchline. Other reigns during this era, however, were forgettable at best. Worse yet, the title began changing hands at house shows or being used for quick, meaningless wins on Thunder. It wasn't just about who was champion anymore, it was about how little WCW cared to tell us why it mattered. By 1999, the belt was being passed around with no sense of direction. Rick Steiner, once a hard-nosed suplex machine, was given a run, but he had almost no defenses of note. The title was floating, forgotten, a relic that was still around because no one had bothered to get rid of it yet. But that day was coming. In November 1999, Scott Hall won the television title and made WCW's feelings crystal clear. By late 1999, the WCW World Television Championship was no longer just being misused, it was being openly disrespected. But rather than defend it, wear it with pride, or even acknowledge its legacy, Hall treated the belt as a joke. Just a few days later, on the November 29, 1999 episode of Nitro, Hall dropped the television championship into a trash can. It wasn't a storyline, it wasn't the setup for a feud. There was no angle, no challenger, no redemption arc, just a visual representation of WCW's crumbling priorities. The message was loud and clear. The television championship no longer mattered. Behind the scenes, WCW was spiraling. Vince Russo had been brought in from the WWF to inject attitude and shock value. But his chaotic booking philosophy clashed with WCW's traditions. Titles were being handed out like props, wrestlers were changing gimmicks weekly, and long-term storytelling had all but vanished. The TV title didn't even get a send-off, no tournament, no unification, no final defense. It just disappeared. A title with over 25 years of history was thrown away on national TV and never mentioned again, until bizarrely, it would resurface months later. In early 2000, Hacksaw Jim Duggan began appearing on WCW Saturday Night and stumbled across the television championship in the trash. Playing it for laughs, Duggan declared himself the new champion. And that was it, just another moment that confirmed how little WCW respected its own legacy. Duggan's reign was never officially recognized, and the belt never appeared again on WCW television. On April 10, 2000, during the infamous WCW reboot, when every title was vacated and the company tried to hit the reset button, the television championship was quietly left out of the new lineage. Unlike the World, US, Cruiserweight, and Tag Team titles, the TV belt wasn't even acknowledged, and just like that, it was dead. For over 2 decades, the television championship was more than a secondary title. It was a rite of passage. From the gritty studios of Mid-Atlantic Championship Wrestling to the national stage of WCW Saturday Night, the TV title wasn't just a plot device. It was a classroom, a crucible, a ladder rung that countless wrestlers climbed on their way to stardom. Think about the names tied to this belt. Ric Flair. Before the robes and the diamonds, the TV title was one of his first showcases. Tully Blanchard. His reign defined heel psychology and storytelling. Arn Anderson, the definitive champion, making the title his personal brand of toughness and ring generalship. Stunning Steve Austin, a technician before the brawling, he cut his teeth with his title before flipping birds. Booker T, the TV title made it clear this man was a future world champion. Chris Jericho, even in a comedy-heavy reign, he made you care about what the belt stood for, if only to mock its neglect. The television championship was never meant to close the show, but it often stole it. It allowed WCW and before that JCP to build stars slowly and logically. It let technicians shine, heels stretch the clock, and babyfaces chase glory under pressure. Its existence gave depth to every card it touched. And in the end, it became a symbol, not just of what was lost in WCW's collapse, but of how mismanaging legacy can be just as damaging as bad booking. The belt deserved more than a trash can. The fans deserved a final match, a real goodbye. Instead, the final memories are of confusion and disrespect. Today, its spirit lives on in the TNT Championship in AEW, and the NWA World Television title reborn under Billy Corgan's NWA. But for old school fans, it's the red leather, the silver plate, and the time limit drama at 605 that still lives in our hearts. It was once the most respected mid-card title in wrestling, a belt defended weekly by legends, warriors, and workhorses. This was the WCW World Television Championship, a belt that built stars, carried promotions, and told some of the most underrated stories in wrestling history. But what do you remember? Who was your favorite TV champion? Drop your thoughts in the comment below. And if you're feeling nostalgic, hit that like button and share this with a friend, and be sure to subscribe for more wrestling content. Thanks for watching. This is Glocky, and I'll catch you next time. Hey yo, quit playing. Y'all still rocking them weak shirts from the mall kiosk? Man, step your shirt game all the way up.
I'm really tired of putting this shit on every day and doing y'all like this. But this how I'm coming today.
This, that, Pinfalls and Pixels heat, straight out the trenches, where drop kicks meet joysticks. You want smoke? We got it in black tees. Whether you're a juggalo, a gamer, a deathmatch junkie, or just someone who doesn't care what anybody thinks, check out the website. From cosplay mashups to hardcore prints, every shirt talks crazy, just like your favorite promos. And yo, you rock with the channel? Level up and join the movement. Tap in with a YouTube membership. We got dark match, mid-card, and main event tiers. Different tiers, same family. We ain't corporate. We ain't clean cut. This brand came out the dirt, built with blood, pixels, and barbed wire. Link in the description. Click it, cop it, rep it. Pinfalls and Pixels. We don't follow trends, we body them.